Welcome to another CEO Wisdom Pod with Jan J. Rogers. He is CEO at ACE Project Solutions in the Barbados. We're going to talk about commercial real estate. We're going to talk about coaching. We're going to talk about coach control and the cost control that is, and the brokenness of the commercial real estate industry, which I 100% agree on. This podcast is brought to you by podpire.com. If you want to start your podcast, scale one, or be invited to podcasts, find sponsors and monetize podcasting, you can go to podpire.com, send me a message on LinkedIn, Charles Cormier. And yeah, let's get to know one another. Let's get on the pod and let's generate some cash with podcasting. Jan, sure. Welcome to the pod. Tell me a bit more about yourself and tell me a bit more about your company.
Sure. Well, I've got a history in construction and commercial real estate development. I was effectively born into it because my father had a small building firm. So I've been in the industry all my life, seen a lot of experiences. I'm a chartered quantity surveyor by background and moved into project management and then operational facilities management. So I've seen what we call the whole life cycle of a project and how it works from inception to operational reality, as I like to say.
Why is the commercial real estate industry broken?
There are many factors. I mean, it's a complex industry, but I've reflected on this over the last 18 months. And I think there are three fundamental issues. One is the clients themselves. They don't actually understand what they really need in a building. They hand that over to the design team, who are very, very good at designing buildings, but don't necessarily understand the operational requirements of a building. And it's only when a project then goes from design into reality on site that the end user client starts to realize there are issues. The room's not in the right location, or this is missing, or why is that there, all of those sorts of things. And as a result, that's where you get all the variations and disputes and cost overruns and delays. That's boiling it down to its simplest sense, if you like, but there could be other issues around there, but I think that's the two fundamental issues. And then the other issue that comes into this at a later date is the main contractor or general contractor in the States. They're often on very tight margins, so they're often looking to cost cut, which means the building isn't necessarily built to the best quality. And I think that needs to change in how that is all pulled into the development of a project and the delivery of a project.
What about like all that dormant commercial real estate sitting out there? I don't even agree with the premise that businesses need somewhere to work, like people can work from their home. So what about the thesis? Do you agree with that? And do you think that most people will work from their home in the future?
Well, there's a big debate going on around this subject at the moment. Post-COVID, the working practices, in my opinion, have changed fundamentally. And I don't think you're going to get that back to where it was pre-COVID. People have now realized the amount of time that they were spending commuting to the office or the factory or wherever. And there's a lot of wasted time there and inefficiency. Now, there's a lot of people who say that they need to have the staff on board in an office to see their productivity and work, but I don't necessarily believe that. And when you look at, in New York, I think 50% of the office space is still empty post-COVID. People have just not gone back to the office. And so therefore, I think this new way of hybrid working needs to be harnessed. There are some companies that have started in California purely as a virtual business, and they're 1,000 staff strong and very, very profitable and successful. So it can be done. It's just shifting the paradigm as to how you do it. And then it's what you do with that leftover space and how you convert it to more appropriate residential space that people can live, work, play in the same place.
Right, yeah, because the debate, I think, is pretty much over. I mean, there's employers that want to keep their team physically because there's more cohesion and they have more control over them. Control is the keyword, right? It's like if they were still owning some slaves. And they want that, but like people have totally different lives. I cannot picture myself working, not working from home on my side. I'm taking care of 4 dogs, 2 of them have operations right now. There's people coming in the house every day. There's Amazon. It'll be complete chaos if I would work from a distance. Right
Yeah.
now it's controlled chaos, that's what that is. So I just think people are disillusioned. I talked with another guy who was like, yeah, I love working in a WeWork. And yeah, 2 months later, WeWork is down, it's dead. I just think people, need to have nice home offices, have nice systems to work from home. And yeah, I think what can be done, for example, I had the commercial real estate, it's landlord and property developer on the pod not so long ago, and he was talking about Manhattan prime real estate and converting it into residential. Is it I don't know. I don't know why it took so long for people to get that insight. Is it because it was an old ecosystem that moves very slowly? There's banks involved, there's loans. Is that why people move so slow? And am I wrong in thinking that there's very much a lack of innovation in the real estate space?
Well, there's several points there in terms of converting commercial space to residential. That is beginning to get more and more traction now, and I think that needs to build up. Yes, there are issues around planning, control, zoning, all of those sorts of things, and the banks involved, and the whole financial sort of model, if you like, in terms of getting the right income to support the debts. So there are a number of complicated factors around that, but it can easily be done if you've got the right will and ability to do that. And I think more and more of that needs to happen, whereby you may even have combined residential and commercial space. So rather than commuting for half an hour or 3/4 of an hour, you commute two floors down to a shared office space. It just needs a completely new way of looking at how people want to live their lives now. And as you say, we've got used to being at home so we can take the Amazon delivery, look after the dogs and all that sort of stuff. Employers have got to understand that life's moved on now, and we've got to change into the way that people want to live now. And they want that better quality of life. I mean, there's the younger generation, they're into sustainability and they're into experience. They don't want to trudge hours just to work at somebody else's desk. They've got their own way of working now, and they have got a different mindset. So I think there is room to change that. In terms of the industry itself, I think it is way behind the times. It hasn't moved forward. There is a lot of innovation that could be brought into it, but the industry currently works in too many different silos, and there's not enough collaboration coming together between the various component parts to look at things in a much more holistic way, such that you can collaborate more effectively. And that's what I'm looking at myself, as to how can people use the technology that is now available, rather than putting the technology on top of the existing structures. Use the technology as the base and rebuild the structures to deliver projects on the new base of technology.
So what is it that you do nowadays? Who do you target with what kind of service?
Well, I target to work with property developers and property investors to make their returns better by looking at a much more efficient model as to how you deliver those projects. As I say, I've developed a new framework to enable people to work in a much more effective way by looking at the projects in much more detail early on before the design team is appointed. So the design team know exactly what they need to do once they've got their appointment, and they also know what technology they have to use to deliver that project. And a lot of that is not thought out properly early on, and that's where, in my opinion, a lot of the issues emanate from, because they're not looking at a new way of pulling this all together. Yes, there may be some more upfront costs, but it will save considerably in the construction costs. But also, if you get it right, it will save considerably in the operational costs, which will make that building much more effective for the owner in terms of the return on his investment, but also the occupiers in terms of their operational costs being a lot less.
Right, and how much do you charge for these services?
That's an impossible question to answer, because there are just so many different routes to market and size of project. I mean, it all depends on what services are required and how that is structured to be able to price that. So I literally will price on a project by project basis rather than an hourly rate, etc., because you just don't know what each project needs.
And is that $1 million business a year? You take that cash and you reinvest it in real estate?
Effectively, yes. I mean, the sorts of projects I work on tend to be larger projects rather than small one-off residential projects, although I can apply what I've got to the smaller residential market, but it tends to be either large commercial residential type projects, multi-story towers, or pure commercial office, industrial factory type complexes. As I think the scale is there to generate the better savings on that scale of project.
Because WeWork was pivoting to residential years ago. I guess they understood that, yeah, the future wasn't commercial. What's the thesis of folks that still invest in commercial real estate? Do they think they're gonna have an ROI to their project in 10 to 20 years?
I think there's going to be some problem. And yes, there's a lot of people still putting up major commercial office space and industrial space. Not so much industrial space, but I think the commercial space is likely to have to change. And if they haven't got a product that is flexible and enable them to change easily, they could get caught short. And I know a lot of commercial projects around the world are beginning to get into some degree of difficulty. And I mean, for instance, in New York and Manhattan, there's a lot of empty space at the moment.
Yeah, and in San Francisco too. I do believe though that commercial centers still have a future. What do you think about that?
I think they have a future if they follow what I would call the work, live, play type environment where they've got everything in the one community. I know there's a lot about being talked about the 15-minute city, which is a different agenda. But I think if it's done right, the work, live, play model does have a lot of benefits, and it does cut down on travel and wasted time. But it's got to be done in a way that you can still live your life the way you want to live it.
Right. Then I want to ask you, basically with these commercial real estate companies in the SaaS sector, what do you see in that side of things? What startups are quite impressive from the real estate commercial side of things? Internet companies, I've saw many on my side, for example, property management, that can be cool. Do you also see growth in that sphere, that industry, that area of things?
You mean in the internet or software development
B2B,
space?
commercial real estate SaaS.
When you say so, you mean software as a service type? Yeah.
Right.
Just to clear. There is potential for that. I mean, they are beginning to bring in tokenized securities, which enable you to effectively raise funds from multiple people a lot more easily. So there's that side of the real estate industry that's beginning to evolve. It's complex, and the various authorities are trying to control that in terms of licensing and bringing it under the financial controls that they want to try and do. But I think that's a big opportunity, is the tokenized securities of property. So a SaaS service in real estate in its own right is probably more challenging because it's a physical asset. But there is ways of trying to bring that into the modern world so that you can operate from, as I say, on the work, live, play. So you can start to actually offer that as a service, if you like, out to the people. I think the real opportunity is what we're looking at is offering the SaaS solution to the actual program management of delivering projects, so that you actually are providing a service to the developer and or investor with a data managed service that's outside of all the usual people that hold that information. So you're sort of decentralizing stroke centralizing. So you're taking it away from maybe the design team and bringing it into a holistic product where all data for that building is stored. The design data, the build data, and the asset management and that sort of data, and offering that as a SaaS service. That is something that I'm looking at the moment.
What about the Barbados? Like, why did you decide to go live there?
Well, that was by pure fluke, I won a small contract, which grew into a bigger contract. And then I got other contracts passed to me, and I moved my life out here. And it suits me because it's a beautiful country. The balance of life here is really nice. There are tax advantages because Barbados has got a very good tax environment for international businesses to do work here. And it's a reasonably sophisticated country in its own right. So you get the best of both worlds. So it's a nice base to be based from. And I can work around the world with the technology that we now have, with the Zooms and Teams of this world. I can do business pretty well anywhere in the world. I mean, I'm currently doing work in East Africa, looking at work in New York, all from a base on a small tropical island.
Pretty decent. You often talk about mindset, since you coach out real estate folks also on your side.
Sure.
What problems do you see your clients having from a mindset perspective, and how do you resolve these?
Well, from a mindset point of view, that with a real estate development can be overwhelmed because there's a lot of moving parts in a real estate development. So a lot of people get overwhelmed. They don't necessarily think the right way about real estate. They just want the golden trophy of the building without realizing what it entails. So it's about unpacking all of that with clients and trying to get them in the right mindset to look at all the different elements in a more logical, process-driven way, so that you can actually take control of it and look after your mind as a result. There is also the mindset of where you want to set yourself in terms of your goals and your objectives. And with real estate, you can actually go quite big. And a lot of people on the flip side of that actually try and stay small because they think that's in their comfort zone. But if you put the right structures and processes around you, there is no reason why you can't go for the bigger deals, even if you're a small guy.
Love that. What are your challenges coming for 2024?
I think the biggest challenge at the moment is getting finance for projects, because the financial institutions are getting a lot more risk adverse. We know interest rates have gone up significantly, so that makes the affordability of projects more challenging. I mean, ironically, we're probably at the median space of interest rates, because historically interest rates always average out at around 5%. And that's more or less where we've got back to. We've had a very long period of very low interest rates, which has given people false security, in my opinion, in terms of what you could do with real estate. I always knew that it was going to come back up to around the 5% because that is the historic norm. But it is causing challenges because people have been used to low interest rates, and therefore they could leverage their money in a bigger way. That's coming back to bite them if they haven't structured that correctly. So financing of projects and getting the financing for a project is the biggest challenge at the moment, and probably well into next year.
And in your case, it's the Barbados financial ecosystem that you get financing from, or the American one?
Well, Barbados has got its own little microcosm of finance because it's got very strong exchange control. So getting money out of the country is challenging unless it came in the first place. So we have to look at that very carefully. But I do look at America quite a bit for funding, and some of the European markets.
And are these markets more dormant nowadays, or than the US, that is, or is this market more active in terms of funding via the US?
I think the US is still the most active market in terms of funding projects. It's the biggest financial market in the world. London is going through a lot of change at the moment. It's not as big as it used to be. It still likes to think it is one of the leading centres, but it's not modernized itself. So it's not holding on to the financial services that it used to do, but it's still a major centre for raising funds for projects.
Right. So what do your goals look like for 2024, sorry, what do you have there?
My goals for my personal firm is I want to get 2 or 3 major developers onto the new framework that I've developed and trial that out to prove there is a better way to do real estate development projects. So I'm actively hunting for open-minded developers that are prepared to look at a different model, prove that it works, and actually save them money.
Love it. And where can people find out more about you, Jan?
Well, my company is ACE, as in ACE, ACE Project Solutions with an S at the end of it. So my website is aceprojectsolutions.com. And my email is ian.rogers, ROGERS, @aceprojectsolutions.com. So that's the best way to get hold of me.
I was Charles Cormier and Jan Rogers for another CEOWisdomPodcast.com.